happens? We didn't plan it. We use the power of thinking. And today we are beginning our 7 steps of prosperity thinking with an examination of 7 laws. The first law is the law of thinking. Thinking is important. We all know and have seen examples of what happens when we go through life without thinking. I remember a line from Wizard of Oz when the Scarecrow was talking about having a brain, and I think it was the wizard said, I know a lot of people who don't have a brain, and yet they go through life just fine. We all have brains. But how do we consciously engage our power of thinking? How do we use it constructively? Well, that's a really big question. And the question is, do we really have the capacity, the equipment, the power to be in control of our lives? How many of you feel like you really are in control of your life? Yeah, some of you, because you've been in unity a while. Sometimes, though, even those of us who have been in unity a long time have those times, let's be honest, when it feels like we are not in control. We are. We always are. But there are those moments when we have the appearances of illness or lack, or we may feel like we are the victim of circumstance, or at the mercy of other people. What do we do in those times? How do we come back into using the power of thought to overcome this fatalistic belief that sometimes crops up in the most enlightened of us? And believe me, the most enlightened teachers on earth have dealt with this as well. We're going to look at some of those teachings today. And what happens if we don't use the power of law? Because the law of thinking, the law of thinking works no matter how we are thinking. And so when we become caught up in these negative ideas, in these karmic, I call them fatalistic karmic ideas, because they are all around us. And there is karma involved in instead of becoming masters of our lives, we become puppets. We lose control of our destiny. And it's very easy to become karmic addicts. We see that happening a lot in our world today. Just look at social media. We are addicted to the negative. We are addicted to the turmoil, and the chaos, and the disagreement. What if we change our addiction? What if we let go of that karmic addiction? You see, the truth is, the mind is creative. It is causative. It is the cause of our reality. It is the cause of our experience. It is the cause of our circumstance. How many of us can accept that? You know, we sing, I am the thinker that thinks the thoughts. And then we go home and think negative thoughts. What are we building? What are we giving power to? What are we creating for ourselves with our minds in our lives? What reality, what experiences, what circumstances? Because the circumstances that we experience are not limited to our conditions. They are directly influenced, empowered, and given life by our very thoughts. If you really think about it, all of our life, every single aspect of our lives is the outcome of ideas. Can we all accept that? Every single thing that we experience, whether we accept it or not, whether we agree with it or not, is the result of an idea. Ideas are powerful. They are potent. And if those ideas are rooted in lack, in loss, in fear, they result in decay. And they attract what is ideal. A negative thought attracts more negative thought. Likewise, a positive thought attracts what?
Positive.
Oh, good. You're paying attention. Okay. Positive thought. Yes. And what happens is thoughts are things. We're going to look at that a little deeper in a minute. thoughts are things, and thoughts are energy, and energy manifests as matter, as experience. You know, every great teacher the world has ever seen from any religion has taught these truths. How many of you have heard things like this? As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That which I fear has come upon me. Gandhi was quoted as a man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. Napoleon Hill. The vast majority of people are born, grow up, struggle, and go through life in misery and failure, not realizing that it would be just as easy to switch over and get exactly what they want out of life, not recognizing that the mind attracts the thing it dwells upon. Want to go further back in history? Lao Tzu wrote it down in China. To see things in the seed, that is genius. Some people see a seed of an idea, and it may be something very negative, but they see possibility in it. The Buddha said this, with our thoughts, we make the world. What kind of world are we making? With our thoughts, we make the world. Muhammad said this, God has said, I am all that is. I am to my servants according to their expectations of me. What do we expect from the Spirit? I'm going to rephrase that with a little bit of unity terminology. Because we believe God is principle, God is law. So let's put it this way. Law has said, I am all that is. I am to my servants according to their expectations of me. Law is impartial. Spirit is impartial. We have free will. And so if our expectation is something less than good and whole and perfect and true and loving, guess what? It's still going to work. You're going to get what your thoughts are dwelling upon. The point is this. If all of the conditions in our lives are the result of our actions, and all actions are the result of our thinking, of our ideas, then our ideas must be what determines the conditions of our life. It's not out there. It's not politicians. It's not governments. It's not economies. It's not even the weather. It is our thoughts. So, looking at that, accepting that, we have to ask another question. And that next question is, what are ideas? What are ideas really? Well, notice it starts with the idea. It starts with the personality. It starts with the identity of who you are. Okay? They are your ideas. And an idea is defined as a group of thoughts, an image or a picture in the mind. An image or a picture in the mind. What ideas do we hold of life? What ideas do we hold of creation? What ideas do we hold of what we are creating? Think about Genesis 1 and 2. Two different creation stories. Have you ever wondered why it's told twice in Genesis? How many of you have actually looked at it and read it? Don't read, you don't have to raise your hand. It's not a test. But trust me, Genesis 1 and 2 is the creation story told twice. The first time is the idea of creation. It's in the head. We could say it was in God's mind. It was God dreaming of creation. The second is the actual manifestation of that idea. So even in Genesis, the process of creation is thoughts held in mind produce after their time. Everything starts in the mind of God and then is manifest. In Unity, we use the Bible metaphysically. In other words, we believe that the Bible is a book that tells us how we do things. Not about people who lived tens of thousands of years ago or 4,000 years ago or whatever you believe. That's irrelevant. It's about how we create. So right there is the first lesson. We think, we picture, we give form in consciousness, and then we bring it into manifestation. Every mental idea must produce after its own kind. That is law. That is true. It must produce after its own accounting. So, as we begin to explore ideas, we can understand that human beings are meant to think. We have a brain, we are meant to think. And what are we meant to think? Are we meant to think in a way of all about reacting to whatever is going on around us? Or are we designed to think of divine ideas to bring forth into manifestation? Instead of just reacting to what happens to us. A computer can do that. Plug something in, it reacts. It spits out an answer. We are more than computers. Human beings are also progressive beings. We are meant to grow, we are meant to evolve, and it's not a function of age. I don't care how old somebody is, they are meant to grow and evolve. It's amazing to me. I talk to people, many of you, who, many of us are older than 60 years old. And I love talking to people who say, I don't know how I ever had time for a job. Because it tells me you're engaging life, you're growing, you're continuing to evolve, you haven't stopped. A state of constant growth. Because if we're not, we are in a state of constant decay. It's one or the other. There's no in between. So which direction we go is determined by our ruling mental state. Study after study after study after study has shown that people who still have dreams and goals in life, that are still striving for something, that are still evolving, that are still learning new things, live longer, healthier, more vibrant lives. So, if your life has not been getting greater and greater and greater, it's an invitation to look at it. What ideas are we holding in mind? Charles Fillmore said this: the ruling state of mind is made up of various mental attitudes, which the individual adopts towards things, events, and life in general. If the attitudes are broad in mind, optimistic in tone, and true to the power of life, the mental state will correspond to an energy of attraction and growth. Thoughts held in mind are more than just thoughts held in mind. And when we say they produce after their time, what they do is they actually give off an energy field that is measurable by science and literally attracts what we need in our lives to grow, to evolve, to be more prosperous, to have that life abundance that the Masters taught about. Charles went on with this: if, however, the ruling mental state is downward in tendency, that is discordant and negative, and all the life forces are then misdirected. Misdirected. So the first law of thinking is the oldie but goodie that we have in unity. Thoughts held in mind do what? Very good. Thoughts held in mind do what? Produce after their time. So what's an easy way to make sure that those thoughts we are holding in our mind are good and positive and filled with potential and possibility? Notice what you are thinking. That's how we do it. Be aware of what you are thinking. You could call it mindfulness. Be mindful of what thoughts are going through your mind, because there will be negative chatter. Is there anybody who never has negative chatter? If so, I'm going to hand you the mic and sit down. There's negative chatter. We live in a world where there's a lot of negative messages floating around, and it's in the very air. With our electronics and everything, it's floating here. And guess what? The mind is electrical, and it does pick up on that stuff. That's why it's so important that we learn to be aware of what thoughts are going through our mind. And it's okay if a little negative thought pops up. It will. And don't be angry at it, because the mind is doing what it's supposed to do. It's thinking. Just say, oh, good job, mind, but we don't need that one. visualizing disappearing in a puff of smoke or flushing down the toilet. I don't care what it is. But visualize it going away. And be grateful, because the mind is thinking. But the mind needs discipline. And that discipline is controlling what we're thinking. And the only way we can do that is to be aware of what we are thinking. As we do this, we discover that our attitudes, all the ideas that we hold in our own minds, our attitudes have their origins in our points of view. We all have points of view, don't we? And they're all different. You've all seen two people looking at the number 6 on the ground, only this guy's looking at it this way and it's a 6, and this guy says, no, it's a 9, and they get into a big argument. It's the same thing. They're looking at the same thing, but with two different points of view. In our own consciousness, we do that. We have different points of view, and those points of view are extremely influenced by the people around us, and the voices around us. But as we begin to notice our thoughts, as we begin to pay attention to our thinking, we begin to realize that even though those voices are around us, even though we're inundated with those messages every day, we don't have to take them in. If we find they start becoming incorporated in our thinking, we say, no, not accepting that one. Thank you for your input, but I don't want that. And as it happens, it gets easier and easier and easier. And we begin to find that we're shifting our thinking, and that we're open to receiving higher, purer, more creative ideas. You know, I'm going to tell you a story about a guy named Charles Darrow. Charles Darrow was born in the early 1900s. And there was a game that was very popular in the 1920s called the landlord game. And in this game, this is starting to sound familiar, but don't get ahead of me. In this game, you could buy and sell property via landlord. It was very much like Monopoly, but much more difficult to play. But it was a popular game. And then what happened in the 1930s, the Depression. And Charles Darrow found himself virtually destitute, like so many other people did. And his children were hungry to take their minds off of this. They got out the old landlord game, but it was too difficult for the kids. So he began to simplify it, and he began to slowly create a new idea of a game using the streets of the town he had grown up in. Of course, I'm talking about Monopoly. And over time, you know, the game kind of began to evolve, and then his neighbors, they'd invite them over and they would play, and other people heard about it and began making copies of it. And originally it was just drawn on a piece of cloth. That was what the board was. And thimbles, things like that were the pieces. But as it began to grow, he began to think, well, you know what? There's a possibility here. Rather than dwelling on what I don't have, I have a possibility here of selling this and making enough money to buy some groceries and food for my kids. And so he began to sell it. He began to make it a little nicer and more professional. He began to market and sell it, and he was doing pretty good. And he went to Parker Brothers and he said, oh no, there's already a game like that, nobody's going to want that. So he went back home. And eventually so many of those games that Parker Brothers said, oh wait a minute, this guy's making money off of this. Nobody's buying the landlord game anymore. And so he sold it for a whole lot of money to Parker Brothers. But the point is, he saw a possibility. He saw what could be. We were over in Springfield last week, and I love pine trees, and there's not a lot of them around here. And we were over in Springfield, and in the parking lot there were these cool-looking pine trees, and there was a pine cone there. Now some people would look and say, oh, what a pretty pine cone. But I saw a possibility in that pine cone. I said, I'm going to take that home, let it open up and get the seeds, and plant the seeds, and then we'll have pine trees. Do you see the pine cone, the sharp, prickly, sticky pine cone? Or do you see the seeds inside of it in life? Do you see the sharp, prickly, sticky things that might fall on your head and hurt you? Or do you see the possibility inside of those things? What ideas do we hold? Too often we depend on what our eyes eyes see. I'm going to let you in on a little secret I discovered. Eyes don't see anything. Did you know that? They don't see anything. What happens is light waves come in through the eyes, and the eyes focus it and send it to a receptor in the back, and that receptor takes those and changes it into electrical vibrations. And those go into the memory center of your brain, and pretend there's little guys in your brain that go around over the cloud cabinet and say, oh, here's the match, it's a tree. We've seen this before. And so you see a tree. You don't see with your eyes, you see with your mind. Same works for ears. They hear vibrating airwaves, and they change that into an electrical signal, which says, oh, yeah, we've heard this before. This is music. This is Jerry on the piano. This is Ayla singing Amazing Grace. This is whatever. Yes, in a few minutes. And it says, oh, we know this. We know this. And sometimes we see or hear things we've never seen or heard before in our minds, and I don't know what to do with that. But we hear it again, or we see it again and again, and the mind creates the picture for it. What do we hear around us? What do we read around it that's in print? That gives us, what ideas does it trigger in our minds? Does it trigger ideas of fear, of lack, memories of things that didn't work, relationships that fell apart, jobs that didn't work out, what have you? If it does, that's okay, because that was the picture we had. But when you notice your thoughts, you can say, yes, that's an outdated file. We need to rewrite that program. We need to write in the possibility code. I just made that up. That's kind of cool. We need to write in the possibility code. And so we create something new. What has only been understood until recently is that as we do that for ourselves in our own minds, it impacts those around us. It actually changes what we call in unity the race consciousness, the collective consciousness of humanity. The more we change our thinking, the more we change the thinking around us. Jesus said, if I am lifted up, I draw all others with me. Or unto me, the King James, and he didn't speak. What did he mean? He was saying when we lift up this higher consciousness, the I am, the mind of God that is in each and every one of us, when we lift ourselves up to that higher place, we draw others up with us. And when we are around people who are lifting themselves up to that higher place, we are lifted up as well. It wasn't a one-time thing. He wasn't saying, put me up on a pedestal and worship me. He was saying, think like I think. Think like I think. So we begin to understand now how powerful thought is. We are the thinker who thinks the thoughts, and we have the power to change them. We have the power to then change our lives. Maybe that's what Paul meant in that letter he wrote to the Romans when he said, do not be conformed by the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. That by testing what you may discern is the will of God, you will learn what is good and perfect and acceptable. Transform your mind. I am made whole by the renewing of my mind. We hear these statements over and over and over again. How can it change the world around us? Another story. This one's true. This one was somebody I actually know. I knew a couple. Sarah was a licensed unity teacher. Jim was her husband. And they had just gotten married. They were in their 70s when they got married. It was her third marriage and his second. But they got married in their 70s. And they wanted a place in the country with at least 10 acres of land and a beautiful view. They created this. They envisioned it. And they went out looking. And lo and behold, they found a place. It was perfect. From the house, you could see 5 different mountain ranges. And if you look to the east, that way, it was in New Mexico. If you look to the east, you could see the sun rising over the eastern plains 200 miles away in the morning. One of the most beautiful places you could ever hope to see. But here's the thing. It was a beautiful house, well-maintained, good shape. It had been on the market for almost 20 years. It had not sold. Now, fortunately, the people who did own it kept it up. They took care of it. But why? They sat down and, they talked to the realtor. The realtor said, I think you like this place, but I don't know, it's cursed or something. And so they said, well, what happened? They said, well, I don't know, that loans don't go through or people back out. We can't figure it out. This is the Jones place. And the Jones place is one of the most beautiful pieces of property in this area. I don't know why it won't sell. And then Jim and Sarah looked at each other and go, we know why it won't sell. You keep calling it the Jones place. It's the Jones place. It's never going to be anybody else's until you change that thing. Jim was kind of a person who didn't hesitate to do what he felt needed to be done. So while they were standing there in the driveway talking to the realtor, he does at 70-some-odd years old, doesn't cry, takes a mailbox with a sign that says the Jones place down. And the realtor looks at him and says, don't worry, I'll replace it. Before they ever even negotiated a contract or anything, he went home, got a new mailbox, and he was a woodworker, so he made a sign that said Opie Acres, O-P-Y. And O-P-Y stood for Our Place Yes. Guess what? 3 days later, the loan was approved, the mortgage was approved, everything was ready, and they closed. And they owned it for the rest of their lives. Because they changed the thought about it. How powerful is our thinking? 20 years, nobody could break that idea that it was the Jones place. But somebody said it's our place. Yes. That's how powerful thought is. Now, the one thing we also have to watch with thought is we live in a culture that says, well, you have to fight evil. You have to overcome those evil thoughts. It's a struggle. You got to pull out your sword of truth and cut to pieces. We're a very violent people. We really are. We're told we have to defeat negative thinking. We have to defeat Satan. I'm going to ask you something. What would happen if we changed our thinking about that and came to realize that there is nothing to be defeated? There is nothing to be fought against, or no one to be fought against. Let me tell you something. By spending all of your energy, all of your life force, all of your mind energy on fighting and defeating something, you have nothing left for creation. Energy goes where you send it. And if you are sending it towards violence, if you are sending it towards fighting or overcoming, thinking that there's this big thing you got to fight against and wrestle with and overthrow and crush, you got nothing left for creation. Where are you putting your thoughts? Thoughts held in mind, produced after the kind. And that kind of thinking creates more of what you're thinking about. More obstacles, more fighting, more things to overcome, more fear. And that's why people get stuck and never move on with their ideas. They have a great idea, but they never do anything with it. We learned in the Prosperity Plus 3 class that we don't have to know what each next step is. All we have to do is know what step to take right now. Because when we take that step, the next one is revealed. And we are shown the way. So, as long as we allow things to be real for us, as long as we put energy into them, we are nurturing them. And because of the law, they grow and they become part of our life and experience. So pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to where you are putting that mind energy. Because you cannot stop thinking. It's not possible. We can, though, direct the direction of our thinking. Think about the flu epidemic some years ago. We're starting to hear flu rumors again. It's cold and flu season, you're all going to die. Please. You know there's no more germs this time of year than any other time of year. In the 1920s, when those flu epidemics were wiping out entire towns in the U.S., and I think, if I remember right, the Midwest was hit particularly hard, there was an article that appeared in the Kansas City newspaper. And that article was by a doctor, and he said, "Do not be afraid of the flu." Because he knew that most of the people that were dying because they were afraid. That which I fear has come upon me. Thoughts held in mind for use after their dying. And of course, he was laughed at, but science has since then proven he was right. He was right. Maybe this is what it means when Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of heaven. What if the kingdom of heaven is creative thought? Seek first creative thought, and then all things will be added. Seek first right thinking. Notice what you are noticing. Be aware of what you are thinking. Don't be a drifter and just go along with whatever messages are floating around you. We see that all the time, and it's so easy with social media and all of that, isn't it? To buy into those messages and just go along with them. Oh, these people were evil, all evil, only evil. These people are all good, only good. Nah, we're both and all. You know, we heard a talk last night, some of us, about, and or. We can be good or evil. Oh, maybe we are good and evil. And evil, we know, is just living life backwards. It's not being in alignment, which can be changed very easily. You know, we hear thoughts where we drift along with all the time around here. Oh, it's a poor area of the country. We're poor people. There's no way to succeed. Baloney. Baloney. I could say something else, but kids might be coming in. Amen. We are meant to be builders. The word build, this means where do we dwell? Where do we dwell in our mind? What kind of life do we dwell in? How do we live? What are we picturing? What are we creating? Thoughts build our lives. And real good builders examine their thoughts, examine their plans, and they make changes where necessary. They know that the law works always, 100%. If you're thinking negative, you're going to get negative. If you're thinking positive, you're going to get positive. If you're thinking life, you get life. If you're thinking death, you get death. Where are our thoughts? I'm going to close and leave you with one of my favorite poems by Henry Van Dyke called Thoughts Are Things. I hold it true that thoughts are things. They're endowed with bodies, breath, and wings. And that we send them forth to fill the world with good results or ill. That which we call our secret thought speeds forth to earth's remotest spot, leaving its blessings or its woes, like tracks behind it as it goes. We build our future thought by thought, for good or ill, yet know it not. Yet so the universe has wrought. Thought is just another name for faith. Choose then thy destiny and wait, for love brings love, and hate brings hate.